Well, we're back at it today. So this is the instrument cluster we're going to use for the Pontiac. And it was chosen because it's approximately the same size as what was in the Vega and Astre of this year's. So this is a Dakota Digital VHX series for 66 to 67 Chevy 2. So I think it's pretty cool. It's got everything we need in there. It's got volts, oil, RPM, miles per hour, temperature, fuel. The signal lights are in there. It's got a little digital display. So we could probably, which I've used in the past, use the Torque app and display everything on your phone or on a tablet that's built in. But the problem I always have is you always need an aftermarket or additional gauge for fuel and one for oil pressure. So this is built in. So if you think about that, maybe those are $75 a piece. So there's $150. A lot of people have tablets, but anyway, as you start adding the cost up, you have to put turn signals in, a high beam light. It's not really expensive, but the cost adds up. So when we looked at this VHX series, it's really very competitive, and in our opinion, it's going to be the best solution for his car. So we're going to try this out. So the first thing I wanted to do was come up with a way to mount this into the vehicle. So this is the back side of the Dakota Digital Dash. It's the VHX series. So it only has one connector, which is pretty cool, but we'll worry about that later. So the first thing I needed to do was there's all these holes in the back. So this holds the front bezel to the back. That comes with it. And then there's a 1/4 inch hole. And there's another screw to hold it together, 1/4 inch hole. So you get this all the way around. So it took me 1, 2, 3, 4 tries to get that right, because you have to get all the holes close to each other, and they're pretty close. I'm going to do a little bit more up. But the next thing we need to do is start looking at how to actually mount this into the car. So I'll show you my first concept, and we'll go from there. So the first thing I did was actually look at the dash and check out the angles and the links and things like that. And we'd mocked it up in there before, but now I actually had something to mount the instrument cluster to. So I just took a piece of sheet metal, probably 16 gauge I had laying around, or 20 gauge. Just put a 90 in it to give myself some room to play with. And this will have to be cut down. But put this in here with this, clamp this in place, and put this in here. And I really like how that fits. So we could have some, what do you call those? Tab bolts or nuts, but the ones that you just slide on and you can run a screw up through. So we can hold that up into the dash. This will hold onto here, and then the bottom will make some brackets. So the plan is, on revision 4, to integrate the mounting bracket and the angle into one piece. So what I plan on doing is coming up maybe a 1/4 or 1/2 inch top of the instrument cluster and making a bend. So I'll just extend this panel up enough to make a good bend and just leave myself extra room here to fit it in the car, and then do the same thing, have extra material here so that we can wrap that around probably to here. Then we'll just put a filler strip across the bottom and do that on both sides. So I'm going to get to designing and make a prototype. Working on the instrument cluster again. So I've made revision, I don't know, 5 or 6 now. And I got all the holes the way I want them, got everything fitting around the instrument cluster the way I want. So I wanted to add 2 inches so that I can actually bend this up this way, and then these ends will wrap around. Just weld them to the sides, and hopefully I'll get it pretty close around the radius here. And then I'll create a nice enclosure, and I made it 2 inches wide that'll give us some room that, you know, we can cut it off, and this is angled, we can cut this off to make it fit for the dash. But this will get us close, and we will learn from here. Because then, you know, we can weld a piece in along the bottom to meet to that out there, where it wraps around. It'll stick up like this, and then we can look at how we're actually going to mount this in the car. So up here we can mount it to the existing dash, and we'll create something down here that'll actually mount to the tube that goes across there. So let's see what we come up with. So you can see we got our nice, it's probably a little over 90 degree bend. And I just wanted to come and check to make sure that this still fit in there, which it does. So it gives us a nice little gap all the way around. So what I'll do next is just kind of hammer and dolly those around to fit that outside profile, and check it again, and then we'll tack it in place. I don't think that's anything to be embarrassed about for my first time. So I got it wrapped around the corners, like I was hoping to, the sides, and it looks really, really nice. Just took my time, used a round dolly and sockets and all kinds of things to bend things around, but just did little tacks on the back, ground them down flush so I could have something to use the flat surface of the bench in order to do this end, but I'm pretty happy with that. So let's bolt it together and see what it looks like. Well, I think that fits in there quite nicely. Got about a 1/4 inch gap at the top and a little bit more at the sides. But I think it just gives it a nice shape. So you can see how it looks inside there. We need a little extra room because this hangs down, so I got about probably between an 1/8 and a 1/16 down here. So when I weld this piece on, we'll be able to get it in and out. But for the time being, that looks pretty good. I think we should see what it looks like in the car. Always got to keep motivation. That's a lousy camera shot, but that's kind of centered on the steering column where it is right now, and touching up on the dash. And it looks pretty good. We might move it out just a touch towards the driver, but I think right now that looks pretty good. I just finished tacking up the instrument cluster surround, so I just made a little 2-inch piece on the plasma cutter. Cut it really close to the right length, and just tacked it along the edges. Sure it was nice and flush. Gave a lot of strength to this side because this was actually bowing in because it's so thin and got warm during the plasma cutting. But I think that looks pretty cool. So now I'll use this and start looking at how to mount it to the dash. So I'll pull out the old design chair and spend a little time with it and see what we come up with. I made myself up some little prototype brackets. So in a sense, I set this in the car, and this will sit on the 1.5 by 1.5 tubing, and this will sit on the bottom of the instrument cluster, and that'll go up the back. So I don't know exactly how I'm going to mount them yet. What I think I'm going to do is possibly tack it on the instrument cluster, and then I've got a couple holes drilled where I can put some small screws in and thread the tube. Don't know how I'm going to do it yet, but let's see if these work. Well, this is what we got so far. It's pretty close. Just have to tweak the angles a little bit, but that is just sitting in there with friction and gravity, and that one seems to work. So let's try the other side. I went ahead and tacked those brackets on, trying to make sure everything's pretty close to square. And I'll probably have another one over here. It's just going to be a lot shorter. Just trying to keep clearance here for the steering column and the dash when it rolls around here, but we might put one more in here. We'll see how sturdy it is when we get it in the car. Well, here it is all clamped up into the car. You can see it's just resting on the 1.5 by 1.5 tube. Let's see if I get a light in here, you can see that one. And I just got it approximated. And there's 2 clamps at the top. And again, you probably can't read that. But right now it's saying 0. So I'm getting pretty close at this. But anyway, I think the next thing to do is get the alignment, and there's actually a couple clips in the dash from the factory one. So I might go ahead and drill those in and use those for testing purposes and see what it looks like. Well, I have it just sitting in here now. I think I need a little bit more fitting on that number 10 button head you can see there, but that bracket on the left side is just a little off from the tube down there at the bottom. But this one's sitting good, and it's pretty close to equal distance from that bar. And the main thing for me is, I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's a little red line there in the center of the screen, and that's what I made for the center line of the housing. I'm trying to line that up with the center line of the steering column. And we don't have that finalized yet, so as I said, I'm not fixing this yet. But the screws up here have slots that go left or right, so it'll give us some positioning. But for the first try, it looks pretty good. So let's see what it looks like with the instrument cluster in it. So we've got the instrument cluster in, and it's just got the 2 screws at the top, and literally just gravity and force holding it at the bottom. I'm trying to hold up the steering column with my knees and kind of get the picture. About right there is what I see. So you can see on the left is the speedometer, on the right is the tach. So we are pretty good there. We could go with a larger diameter steering wheel, it's not a big deal, but right now I can't see water temperature, and I think it's temperature and what's this one over here? Oil pressure. But you just move to the side a little bit and you can see those. So, pretty satisfied with that so far. I noticed that this side of the dash is drooping a little bit, but I think we're going to have something in here for the console. So we will play with that next and see what that looks like. So we're on the passenger side of the car now, and I'm looking at how to put the wire in. So we're going to get a whole bunch of wire for both the chassis, the lights and everything, and the engine management system from up in this corner, which I'll show you in a second. So I'm trying to find a way to protect the wires, but when they come in, run them along the firewall and then come down the transmission tunnel, just to kind of get some easy stuff done. So I was looking up in here, and hopefully you can see I got a piece of wire loom sticking through there, and I might reuse those 2 holes for the HVAC system. So I want to find something that comes through here in this area, so I don't throw anything away, of course, which is a good thing, bad thing. So I found a piece of ductwork that might work, so I'm going to cut that up and see what it looks like. This is just for concepting purposes only, but I'm thinking about putting this end over by that big hole, running this along the firewall, and maybe chopping it off over here somewhere, over here. We'll see what fits. But then we can make a pocket inside to run the wires through, and maybe attach this in. simpler than making something. If not, I will get some industrial, I guess it's like a wire rack, but when you do racking, they have this U-channel that you can run the wires in from the side and the back and everything else, and they put a clip over it just to kind of control the wires and make it a lot easier to work on. So I just took a cutoff wheel to it, just cut it down approximately, and made a hole in the back so we can feed the wires up through. So you can see that's a pretty good area in there to run a bunch of wires through. And the funny thing is, it's almost like it was made to fit there. So you can't even see it hardly behind the blower. Covers up the cowl vent. I don't know if we're going to use that or not. We'll find out. But it just fits in there solid. So I'm going to use one of the holes in the AC mount. Probably can't see it. The AC mount's right here. Put a little stick on the wire tie connector right there. So we'll just zip tie it in place and see if this works. Well, for testing purposes only, 3 zip ties and 1 long chain. And that seems to be good enough for now. It goes all the way over. Yeah, my camera works horrible. It goes all the way over to the transmission tunnel, which you really can't see anymore. It goes right to there, which is right at the transmission tunnel. So we can drop our wires down and come down the transmission tunnel. So let's see what we can do with that.